This is something new for me to talk about things that not necessarily I would have talked about before, very technical things, implementation. So I'm going to kind of do a mix of stuff and kind of talking a little bit about how to bring other ideas of process improvement, so continuous improvement techniques, into your agile or iterative way of developing your software and your implementation of doing data integration. Maybe using a little bit of innovation and introducing a culture of innovation into what you do and how you do it, and thinking about that a little bit while reducing the risk of deployment, decreasing the time that actually it takes to deploy things, and decreasing the cost. So kind of putting these all together, thinking about how to mitigate risks, and being honest with yourself and your customer about what the biggest risks are in the projects that you're running and how you're running them. So kind of bringing a whole bunch of ideas together, and I'll try to put it into context of some of the projects that we've worked on and that we're working on now and actively involved with, which is a pretty big one and pretty challenging. So I'll give a little bit of perspective of myself, where I sit in the organization, and a little bit of my history. So I'm at Pfizer. It's a pharmaceutical research and development company, and I work in the R&D space. So I actually work in pharmaceutical sciences, and we're the part of the organization that actually manufactures the drug, forms it into a formulation, a tablet or a liquid, and then delivers it to all the clinical supplies for studies, and then actually transfer the technology to our manufacturing eventually. So I've been a composite user since 2005, and my first 8 years at Pfizer were doing science, pure science, and then I switched to doing information architecture, and I've pretty much been doing it, that ever since in a couple different roles, and I'll explain that. Right now I lead a business information service team, and we really focus on portfolio planning, investment decision making around a farm site portfolio, and resource utilization. And I also own the strategy for farm size. So we're probably, if you think about it, a mid-sized company. We have a budget of about $700 million. So in the pharmaceutical process, which is pretty long actually, we get involved in what we call exploratory development, where we've identified a compound that we believe will be a good drug for a specific target, and we start making material to be able to go to the clinic and to be able to do safety studies. If everything works out well, we continue to go on to full development and do large clinical trials. We develop the actual material for doing the transfer to the commercial organization, and then actually interface with the commercial organization for doing that. So one of the things that is important to understand is that this process is about 10 to 15 years long, and so it takes quite a long time. So we're involved for a long period of time, but we also interface with research on one side. So we have one set of customers of research on the left hand, which has a set of data and a kind of philosophy of how to do things. And on the other hand, we have our commercial customers and our PGM manufacturing, which is Pfizer Global Manufacturing. And they have a certain perspective on what information is and how to operate. And they're quite different. So we kind of get to interface with both. So one of the things that I've been trying to do probably for at least the last 5 years, and if not before that, was try to articulate to our organization and my customers how to get more value out of the information that you have. So originally when I was a scientist, I would try to convince people that really what you need to do is publish your information. So as a scientist, you understand the concept of publishing papers, you understand the concept of actually publishing your data so that other people can use it, and use it in different ways than you ever imagined. So instead of everybody sticking with Excel, and I know everybody loves doing Excel, and everybody's business is pretty much run off of Excel, and transfer all this information around in spreadsheet format, really trying to get people to think about things in much more online, integrated ways so that everyone has access to the same information at the same time, no matter which tool you want. So this is a really important kind of philosophy piece where I want to provide the information to you and everybody else, and you could use any tool you want to look at it. Any extraction tool, any analysis tool, I really don't care, but I want to give you everybody the same data and everybody to have access to it all the time. So I think that's kind of a philosophy thing that I've been pushing for. So I wanted to talk a little bit about innovation and value and data quality. I know data quality is going to come up a lot, and I kind of want to put it in context of things. So I'm going to talk about a New York innovation, which is a hamburger. So in the 1800s, a lot of Germans were working in New York City as dock hands, and the street vendors came up with an innovation to feed them for lunch, and that was the hamburger. Okay? So how is this relevant to what we're doing? And I kind of want to put it into the context of a challenge for what I'm going to call information brokers. So I think Ted called us data people. Oh, I'm going to call us all information brokers instead of and really we're moving information around. We're making it available to other people, and how does that and then I want to look at the relationship between the cost of something and the quality of it. So we're going to look at burgers and the cost and quality of burgers in Manhattan to start with. So we can go down the street and we can go to Burger King, and you could probably get a Junior Whopper for about $1.29, and you're going to have a certain amount of quality to that. You know, it's processed beef. It's probably been shipped in. They flipped it on the grill, and you get pretty much what you expect out of a Junior Whopper. You could also go down to Blue Smoke, which is down on the downtown a little bit further, and for about $12 you can get a burger which is hand ground prime beef, really good, and great service, but it costs a lot more, right? Or at least an order of magnitude more. You could also go down to the Wall Street Burger Shop and get their most expensive burger, and it's it's actually about $175. And it's made out of Wago beef. It has black truffles and gold leaf on it. And, the quality is probably significantly better. So you actually look at this and you say, okay, so I'm actually paying more for better quality, right? So if you think about, say, pharmaceuticals, okay? And you go to your doctor, the doctor gives you a script. You go to the pharmacy to fill a script. And he gives you something for a branded pharmaceutical, okay? And it's expensive, but your insurance is hopefully going to pay for it. But one of the things in the quality of a branded pharmaceutical is that you expect it to be 100% in terms of the drug that's there, at least plus or minus a certain percentage. And it turns out to be it's 100% plus or minus 5%. So that's what the FDA requires the standard to be. Okay? So then if you actually go and you actually say, no, I don't want the name brand, I want a branded generic. It's a lot less money. It's actually cheaper, probably by an order of magnitude. However, the quality's the same. In order to get that branded generic, the company had to prove that it had the same bioequivalence as the original one, and its potency had to be 100% plus or minus 5%. Now, you could also go to Walmart and get the $3 version, right? And again, your quality is exactly the same. So why I bring this up is that I believe as information delivery, as information brokers, is that our situation is more like the drugs than the burgers. Is that the expectation of us in delivering the data is that it has high quality. And that quality is defined based on the business case, right? And each business is going to define their quality requirements a little bit different, whether you're in banking or whether you're in pharmaceuticals, if you're in research, or you're in manufacturing. Everybody's going to have a little bit of different twist on what their measure of quality is, but really the expectation is you can't relate cost to quality. I can't go to my customer and say, you want good quality? Well, that's going to cost $1 million, right? I can't basically overcharge for quality when I'm doing data integration. So I'm going to do a little build here. So how do we really increase? How do we speed up our projects while maintaining this really high quality? So if you look at Lean Six Sigma approaches, they have this kind of this triangle of cost, time, and quality. And in Lean Six Sigma around manufacturing, you're usually looking at processes, and you're looking at deviations of processes and patterns to try to reduce and avoid and remove processes that don't add value. You're trying to look at how do I improve quality measures, and a lot of it has to do with physics or engineering type of aspects. And they really try to decrease both time and quality to save money and get better products. What I'm going to suggest is that you actually turn this on its head, and we put quality at the top, and it always stays high. And we're not going to change quality. We're not going to actually look at trying to change or affect quality. It's always going to be what it's expected to be, high. And so what we're really going to focus on is then how do we decrease the cost of implementing solutions and decrease the time of implementing solutions. So I'm going to try to squeeze this triangle by doing different approaches, by taking a different approach to actually doing the project and using different kind of philosophies and applying things to the project so that I can actually keep my quality high, decrease costs, and decrease the time. So I'm going to go back a few years when I was a data architect on and this was before virtualization. So this is 2003, and we had to build a research information factory. So everybody wanted to put all the information and research into one location. We wanted, I can see all my data in one location situation, right? And so our center of excellence and our toolbox was pretty limited at the time. We were, a ETL shop, and we had, the Inman philosophy of data warehousing with a little bit of Kimball Marting involved, right? So we're going to do everything. We're going to take the data and we're going to move it into a persistent stage. We're going to move it into an ODS. We're going to copy it into a warehouse. We're going to copy it also to a MART that's a star schema. So we're going to copy the data once, just straight copy it. We're going to transform it once into the third normal form. Then we're going to transform it again into a fact-based star schema for access. And we're going to do this for all the data, right? So when we started doing this, and for example, in one case we have in research, we have high throughput screening data, which we take our entire sample library of all active compounds, and we screen it against a new target. And we produce a lot of data with this. So we had about 1 billion records to move. And so we spent all of our time optimizing our ETL processes to move. I think we were moving about 20 million records a day, and we would move it to stage, then we'd move it to the ODS, and then we'd move it to the MART, and we're just starting to think of, why are we doing this? Why are we spending so much time and money moving this data 3-4 times? What's the value in this? How is this actually going to really augment the business and help the business solve their problems? If we just moved it once, then they could query that, and they wouldn't impact the transactional system where they were collecting it in the first place. So, what's the real value of this? So, and this is, as we were doing this, we started evolving this thinking about, why are we doing this? And then we started coming to the point was, we would say, okay, we want a new MART. And we'd go to the shared services team, and they'd say, well, okay, so, that's going to take us about a year and cost about $1 million. Right? And so we're kind of in this $1 million 1-year time frame situation where we're going, okay, that's not going to work for us anymore. We need something different. We need something new. And where are we going to go from that? So I kind of, after transferring this to a shared service group, and they've been supporting it since, and it's actually still our research information factory at Pfizer, and it works quite well. But it's now is, in my current role, would I ever want to do that again? Would I ever want to spend all that money and time? This took us about 3.5 years to build. Would it in $3 to $5 million? Would I want to do that again? Right? So I'm going to say no, I won't do that again. I'm going to go and do a continuous improvement approach on doing things. So as I said before, I'm now going to have my quality high, and I'm going to start shrinking my cost and time. So I'm going to start thinking about different things that I could do. So one of my first questions that I'm asking myself is, why move all the data? And in this case, I've got 1 billion records. I've got a whole bunch of things. And I actually need to move it to be able to optimize queries. I need to actually move it out of the transactional systems. Now, I was lucky in research in that I was able to, as part of that project, the first thing that we did was set what all the global reference data was and told all the delivering applications they had to use the global reference data to deliver their data. So I had a very good standardized set of reference data that I was already using. So everybody had the same list of projects. Everybody had the same list of compounds. Everybody used the same primary keys. You know, it was almost an ideal situation. So what we really now thinking about is as I move forward, how do I keep replicating that ideal situation and reduce the amount of times that I move the data? If I move it once to kind of stage it and get it out of the transactional system, then can I put a different type of MART layer on top of it, a different type of technology to use? The other thing is in that past situation, everything was Oracle, right? So when you look at that situation, you say, I have everything in Oracle. Do I need any other technology than Oracle to build views? Oracle's got materialized views? No, I don't. In that situation, that works perfectly fine. I'm good. I can stick with my technology. But it's when you start bringing in things, and we do another, we bought Pharmacia, Upjohn, Searle Company, and we started seeing non-Oracle sources. We started seeing XML sources. We started seeing people wanting to add things from Excel. Then we buy Wyeth, and now we're seeing SAP coming along. I think there was also the situation in Wyeth where you have we have one team with the secret list of projects that we're going to transfer from Wyeth into Pfizer, and we've got another team that has the spreadsheet with the ones that are important and attributes about them. How do I put that data together now really fast? And they want it, yesterday kind of situation, and they want to have a dashboard with statuses on it. So I need new technologies to do that. So what am I going to do? So I come up with this little framework, and this is a modified framework of what we've done in the past. And really what it is, if you look at it from the standpoint I think everyone who does virtual data integration or data integration has a similar framework, a different way of drawing the picture. But we're basically using composite to help us integrate the data. This isn't not necessarily just a pure virtual world. We are using a hybrid world where we are actually having physical data stores and physical databases. We have multiple sources. I just have some of the sources here. Some of the sources actually happen to be composite sources. Other sources are databases, anything ranging from SQL to Excel to XML. And then we have some data entry tools that we've written to actually it's more about annotating the information. So we have a list of projects and we want to annotate them and add more information to them. But then we have one single source of data. So we have people call it one source, single source, and all these different names. But I think we're all trying to achieve the same thing. So we have a single source of the data to use. But then I'm going to allow people to use whatever tool they want on top of that. If you want to use business objects, fantastic. If you want to use Spotfire, great. If you want to write your own Java or .NET applications that sit on top of it, fantastic. I'm happy with all of them. It's a good solution and it works for everybody. Now, the other thing about this is, what's nice about this is it's reusable. So I can keep reusing it for different purposes. So when the Wyeth integration comes along, I just grab the data from 2 or 3 sources that I want to do, pop them together, give my client and my management the dashboard they wanted. And this is like a 2 to 3 day process versus a 2 to 3 week process or any other time frame that I might have to do. So I can do this very fast and very agile. So, and if I think about then adding on what I'll call a culture of innovation, and really this is as being a scientist and thinking in a very in a kind of a scientific method way over the years, and kind of it's just the way that my thought process works versus being an engineer, for example, is that thinking about what is innovation and how does innovation apply. So Jay Papp at MIT did some really nice work with his group there and published some papers on disruptive innovation and these kind of ideas of where really thinking about what is innovation and how to apply it. So if you come up with an idea, a business need, and you come up with technologies to solve that business need, that's a good idea, right? So, but if you can actually implement that and then reuse that idea in multiple times and then actually get value out of it, now you have some innovation. And I think it's that difference between actually being able to reuse and get value out of something. So some of the things that I look at and doing virtualization and doing integration is that really you have to think about designing for reuse and not necessarily always jumping at the one technical solution for solving a problem. And I think a lot of us, sometimes we'll have a customer come to us with a need and they'll go, ooh, I know how to solve that, and dive right into it and just start solving the problem without taking a step back and thinking about it a little bit and actually abstracting up. So, if you ever go to an architecture conference and hear John Zachman talk about the Zachman framework, there's seven levels of abstraction, and really abstracting out at least one or two levels is hugely valuable to understand where you are and where you sit within the solving the problem. And are you trying to solve a problem that somebody else already has, in your organization? So I think there's a few other things here that is really important, and it's a rigorous evaluation of what your customer needs are. So I think a lot of times as information delivery or information brokers, we're asked for something and we go, okay, we'll do it. Instead of asking, now, why do you need this? And what is your business purpose? And I'll get to some of the questions that you can ask to help try to flush out what is the person really looking for and how it should be applied. I think it's also fair to look at all the different options. Virtualization is a good solution. ETL is a good solution sometimes. And there's a lot of different options that you can throw at things. So always keep that toolbox that you have open and really look at the different options that you have. And don't just stick to, if somebody comes and says, and it happens all the time to us, is where a business customer comes and says, I want to do this. And they basically, in their statement, is the tool or is the technology. And sometimes I think we have to take a step back from that and say, okay, maybe what they want is, they know what they want, but they don't necessarily know that that's the right tool. They're just trying to, I think, give you a hint, or that's the tool they know. I think also is coming up with really realistic solutions, and this has to do a lot with the risks. So if you think about the risks that you're going to take in deploying a new technology to an organization, or a technology that is unfamiliar or is introducing change to the organization, understand where you may fail and understand to not bet the whole farm on something, right? So kind of take these concepts of, Wharton School has a great class around failure and, and the analogy of kayaking. Know when to roll over. Know what happens when you roll over. And if you do roll over, know how to get out or flip back, right? So, I mean, it's really understanding of a lot around your potential for failure and when you're going to fail and what your most likely point of failure is. And if you can understand that for yourself and do a little bit of risk management around it, it'll get you to be much more successful. So last spring, we started thinking about something we called the scientific workbench in pharmaceutical sciences. And this was taking a large set of our data that included our scientists work in a laboratory notebook, which is all XML-based. And they have laboratory information management systems, which is usually called the LIMS, data capture systems from all their instruments. We have a portfolio database. We have our supply chain management databases. We have our research information factory that has some of that research data that I showed before. And they want to put it all together, and they want to be able to do predictions and simulation off of it. They want to be able to really ask a question like, for this compound, has anybody worked on it? Or what were the experimental parameters that they did on it? And they want to find all the information. So right now, there is no integration between these. And we started looking at this and said, okay, so here's one way of doing it, is that we could look at using, we started playing around with Composites Discovery tool, started discovering the relationships between the databases. We started modeling some of it in Studio, and we came up, and we came to a point where we said, okay, stop. We've got serious data quality issues, actually. And we actually need to stop and kind of take a couple steps back. And this is not a technical issue. It's a business issue where we actually have in each one of these systems, because each one of these systems was developed kind of in a silo project of developing their system. They knew what a compound was in their perspective. They knew what a batch was in their perspective. They knew what a project was in their perspective. But they didn't look at it across the other systems. So now we've had to kind of take a step back and really start asking questions about the situation that we're in. Is that we want to integrate this. We have the tools to integrate it. We have the tools to access it. But our data actually in the systems is different enough that we can't. And we actually need to go through a process to fix it. So we're starting to ask these questions. You know, when does it happen? Where does it happen around the data? And what's the big business significance? Say, for example, a compound number. Some people are putting commas in them. Some people are not. Some people are putting dashes. Some people are not. Some people are dropping leading zeros. And it's very frustrating for the data integrator to go and look and say, I should be able to join a compound number across all these systems, and I can't. I should be able to search on a compound number, and I can't. And so what we're really trying to do now is we've taken a couple steps back, and we've actually are going to the business and asking them, with some help of consultants, to sit behind them, to get those SMEs in the business to actually start looking at the information that they have, how they put it in, where they need the information from. And I think Ted brought this up this morning. It was kind of coincidental. But it is a business problem. And we've basically said, you know, we have a solution to a technical solution to a problem, but we can't apply it because of the data problem that we have and the quality problem. So now what we've done is we've kind of backed off, right? So we've got all these systems on the bottom. We came up with this common business object model, we're calling it, which, okay, so it's a common model, and we have all these different, you know, ideas that we want. But now we're actually taking that step back and looking at the data issues that we have, looking at the processes of how the data flows in, where the data comes from, and trying to come up with a set of data standards for our organization that then we can collaborate with our research group on one side and our manufacturing group on the other side and satisfy both. And one of the nice things is that we already have these very large physical editions of the RIF and of a development information factory built in kind of the same format, and they have all the data that we need to collaborate with, and we're just putting some virtualization right on top of it. And so we basically build a nice virtual situation that we now can access through this one tool that we've decided to go with for our research scientists. It was called TriPost D360, which, you know, is kind of beside the point. But one of the things that we also realized was that each one of these systems contains a lot of information. And actually, by going through this process and asking these questions again and again, we found out that actually the scientists only want about 10% of the data that's in all these systems. But they want the possibility to access the entire set of data at some point if needed. But that's a second-tier query. So it's not a primary query and going in and saying, I want to, you know, search everything in any one of those particular systems. So we're trying to think about ways and solutions to providing the scientists with the ability to get back at all the data in the systems, but not necessarily replicating or presenting all the data in the first layer of the queries, only that 10% of the information that they're really asking for. And then through a process of iteration, if they ask for new data, we'd be able to provide it to them very quickly. So what are some of the lessons learned that we've had? And I think I'm just going to build this out. So I think really for us, over the last 5 years, and this might even be speaking more towards, I think, all of us at Pfizer in the research and development, is really looking at and abstracting the requests that you get at least 1 or 2 levels up to understand what the big picture is. And I think there was a point made earlier today around communication. I think once you do that and you communicate with architects and other information architects in your organization, and if you have a center of excellence, communicating with other people of what problem you're trying to solve, asking them if they've tried to solve it before or if they have already solved it, you could reduce the amount of work you're doing significantly. I think also challenging processes and that aren't value add is very useful. So we ended up at one point having a process for promoting business objects universes that took about 3 weeks. And we challenged the process with our shared services organization, and we asked them, and we got the right people in the room. It took only an hour to get all the right people in the room and everybody to agree that we had overemphasized the risk of promoting a universe and reports and business objects. We now have a process that it takes 1 day. So, really by challenging some of the processes that you might have and really thinking about the risks that you're taking or the risks that people are assuming about certain processes that you do, you can decrease the time delivery. I think it's been said over and over again around focusing on data quality and consistency from the start. So if really just solving that data quality problem or assuming, right off up front, knowing what the data quality problem is that you have, facing it before you do anything else, that's going to solve a lot of your problems. So, and then I think 3 more, which is, I think a general philosophy is that a broad mix of technology is good for information sharing. I think mixing this whole virtual physical world is the ideal situation, and we're kind of all evolving to there and all figuring it out depending on what our data size is, what our latency is, what our requirements are, and we're kind of figuring out where virtualization works. We've had problems, for example, with the consistency of availability of source databases, right? So, and if you're in a virtualized world, you have to assume that source database will be available all the time. And so in certain circumstances, we've had to really go to caching because we didn't trust that the database would be there all the time. I think the other thing is that from my perspective, as a person now, as an architect, an information architect or broker sitting within the business and doing things, I think actually having open access to the composite platform and promoting the open access, allowing more people to use it. Don't keep it in the back office as an infrastructure tool that only the data warehousing BI team gets access to, right? So, let more people use the tool. Let more people understand the value of the tool. I think what happens is, or I should say what's happened, and I see this with my kids and I see it with the young new hires that we have is that so many people are now very, very technology savvy. They're very comfortable with software. And if you actually provide them with a little bit of guidance and a little bit of help and you give them a piece of software, you'd be amazed at what they can do. And I think the locking it in the back room is not a good thing. So that's my last plug for open sharing. Don't just share the data, share the tools also.